Okay.
So obviously, let's just give a little background as to why, and you guys all know that have been involved. You know, we get those chain emails going that go on, 100 people, and then 100 people reply, and it's hard to keep up. I saw one of those on my Gmail account, and somebody said, "Oh, well, that's Dave Jagrossi. He kind of uses the product." And Scott, I'm sorry, it looks like I already skipped over the agenda, but if you want to go ahead, Scott.
No, I just wanted to thank everybody for getting on the call. I know it's
Okay.
busy, middle of your guys' day, and you might be eating some food too and want to take some time off. But I appreciate you getting on the call. So, yeah.
Thanks for getting on with us. And like I was saying, so we have these large chain emails and a lot of questions, and then a lot of opinions, and a lot of what we call answers. But so just like we do with everything else, guys, and especially the Amy folks, let's get it in a conference call. Let's get the manufacturer right on the phone. We could ask the questions direct. There's no interpretations or there's no confusion. That was kind of the purpose. Mark agreed to help me because Mark's using the product as well, Duro, up in New England Baptist. There's a couple other users here in Connecticut. Pete Daigle, my chapter president. We kind of talk and work through some of the introduction of the containers and what our experiences were. So we figured we'd share that with you guys. We'll bridge that gap. We'll get IST on the line, and we had asked people to submit a bunch of questions, which we formatted. So what we were hoping to do, as you can see, or if you can't see the agenda, we were going to talk about the purpose of the call. We did introductions, and in case, and I assume everybody knows me, I'm sorry. I'm Dave Jagrossi from Middlesex Hospital. I'm on the AMI ST79 committee. I'm president-elect of ISHM. I'm on the Ortho Council with Mark also, and I get out there and speak a little bit. But I'm a user of the product as well, so that put me in a good position to kind of bridge that gap. I knew Scott and the company from a year ago when the tray was kind of really coming back into the market or being reintroduced. So had a little history with it and figured let's do it this way instead of having those endless chain emails going on. So we had intros. We had kind of a purpose of the call. We're going to go into an explanation of the one tray, which would be a bit of a slideshow. So just bear with Scott, because if people don't have access to the slides, he may repeat what you see on the screen, but it's for the folks maybe without slides in front of them. And like we said, we hope IST started a forum on their webpage where you can go up and post questions, and our hopes were that they would post this program up there so that people can go out there and review it. We were going to review the submitted questions after that, and then we were going to leave some space open for some additional questions, and then remind you guys about the forum that was launched. So maybe without ado, Scott, we'll go into the slides that you prepared.
Great. Yeah, I can do that.
I'm gonna mute out. Okay.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for the intro, Dave. Appreciate it. I wanted to dovetail a couple of things. I'm Scott Cohen. I'm the CEO, founder of the company. We took kind of this technology, and actually we're the company and the people that brought this to market. So. Hey,
Scott. I'm sorry. It's Dave. On my end, you're coming in real kind of faint. Is there a way you can get closer to the mic or the phone?
Is that better?
What do you think, guys? It sounds a little better.
Okay.
Thank you.
I wanted to kind of dovetail off of what Dave said, too. We get questions all the time. The questions that are posed today are really the questions that we hear multiple times a day, if not every time we present this new technology. It's something that we deal with. You guys have been doing things one way for a long, long time, and we're a different technology. So hopefully we can review some of the science behind why we do what we do and how we can do it, and then also give you guys a forum to discuss things afterwards. The goal for us to put the forum on our website was to house kind of just questions and answers from users, non-users, critiquers, non-critiquers. We won't have any access in there. I won't be monitoring that. We'll monitor it and make sure there's no language or anything crazy like that, but we won't be responding to that. So it'll be totally peer-to-peer. We don't want to be involved. This is a new technology that you all need to vet in the marketplace and come to your own conclusions on. And that's really why we put that forum together. So hopefully after this call, that'll be the spot that everybody can discuss this product in detail and get the answers you need. If there's something you need that you're not getting the answers to, I'll send out my contact information. You're happy to, give me a call anytime. I'm happy to speak to you. So anyway, just jumping right into this, I wanted to do maybe like a 15-minute just webinar on a couple slides on what the tray is, a few things about the company, and then get into the questions. So really, we're the first, the first and only truly sealed container out there. I mean, we are a container that if you put filters in, lock the lid into the base, and you throw it in a swimming pool, it will float. And when you come back a week later, it'll still be floating, and there won't be a drop of water in the tray. And that's really the whole genesis behind the design of what we do and how we do it. I wanted to put up there, I think our mission's important. We put a lot of thought into the company prior to building the company. We wanted to commit ourselves to be the world's premier sterilization container company. We have a unique, I think, industry-changing technology. And we want to develop that technology and any offshoots of that as we kind of move forward. Pretty simply, one tray is an FDA-cleared, sealed terminal filtered vent sterilization container that utilizes a 4-minute pre-vac, a standard 3-pulse cycle, with a minimum 0 dry cool time required. And we have a 30-day shelf life. So we'll get into some of the questions and all that kind of stuff. The question we get most of the time is, I understand the tray, how do you go from a 48-hour shelf life initially back in 2006 for your initial FDA clearance to today? So we wanted to kind of hit this one head on, and I think that's one of our questions that we'll talk about too, I think, in depth. But really, it comes down to, do you do a letter to file in your design history, or do you refile with the FDA? And that was our decision when we did this. We work with quite a few consultants in the industry on the regulatory side of this. Where Joe Azari, he's by himself. But literally, it came down to a few documents by the FDA that state pretty clearly, if you're looking of when to submit a 510K for a change to an existing, if you extend the shelf life based on FDA-accepted protocols, then you just do a letter to file. And we talked to the FDA about this also. The reason being is, if every small change in language, and as long as you have the science to support it, obviously, but any small change in language like that wasn't really a functionality change, was resubmitted to the resubmitted as a 510K, the FDA would be behind 10 times worse as they are today. So we looked at this very closely. And it's pretty clear. You have this document in front of you guys, and if you won't, we'll obviously put it up there. But it states, extensions of shelf life based on FDA-accepted protocols in the original 510K is a letter to file. So that's what we did. We did a letter to file into our design history and move forward from there. Just so you all know, too, we're currently under testing. We're doing 1-year testing, so obviously that'll take a year. But we're using high power again, like all our testing, to do that kind of stuff for us. So the next slide is really kind of starts us where we want to get to, which is, why do we currently why do current blue wrap and competitive containers require a dry time? I ask this a lot of times. I think you guys know, but a lot of the people we talk to out there say, well, that's because the standards tell us to. Well, it's really all about sterility maintenance. Everything comes out of the sterilizer completely sterile. Really, when that clock starts ticking is when you set it on a table or somewhere else. And I think we all know, that's obviously on the call, all the current blue wraps that are out there and all the current filter medias that are out there are not fluid barriers. So if you have moisture in your tray, when you set it on the table, you create a potential pathway for bugs or bacteria to get from the table through the media or the blue wrap media into that tray and contaminate it. So that's really why we require the dry time. I bring that up because we don't require a dry time, and it goes back to the science behind our tray, so we'll get into that. So how and why it works. There's really three things that are involved in this tray that make it unique as opposed to all the other containers that are out there. The big thing is the tray design. Our patented design with a big filter on top and two big angled filters on the bottom move air better than any other tray that's out there that we've tested. And that's very key in what we need to do, because we need to get air laterally out to the edges of the tray and through this container at a high volume. If you look at the bottom there, the preliminary assessment of the flow in a staggered tray, I pulled this out of some of the testing that we've done. We had outside testing come in and do airflow studies and all this kind of stuff. But you can read through that at your leisure. But it talks about the arrangement of a top filter in the center with an angled filter at the bottom on each lateral end. And that, in essence, has become, it's our opinion that that's the best design out there to move air through a container. The secondary part of that is really the proprietary filters that we utilize. Back to, why you have to dry things. It's because of that potential pathway from bacteria to move from the shelf into the tray.
What's he in pain from?
These are particulate and fluid barriers. So other filter containers, they have filters that are only particulate barriers. They're not fluid barriers, hence requiring the dry times. Our filter is a fluid barrier. If you put fluid on our filter and let it sit there, it will not go through the tray. If you put a filter in our tray and fill the tray up with water, it won't leak. So the point being is we're the truly sealed tray out there. If we can be a truly sealed tray, then we can not have to abide by the drying times needed to reduce or eliminate those paths of bacterial infection. So we've done all the testing here. We absolutely have the highest hydrostatic head
sometimes we'll cut out
specifications and the highest BFE efficiency specifications that are on the market. When we looked at the filter, what we had to do was find the highest hydrostatic head that we could find, and because we want to keep as much water out of the tray as we can, obviously, and we want that to be waterproof. The inverse of that is when you increase hydrostatic head, you decrease the airflow through the material. Sorry about that. So if you increase the hydrostatic head to the level that we do, we decrease what's called the air permeability, and that's the airflow through the filter media, because we have to take our filter, make those holes, for lack of a better term, smaller to not allow water molecules through, but also condense down the airflow capabilities of the tray. When we pull that down, the other part that we just talked about, which was the design of the tray and the high airflow capabilities, make up for that reduction in air permeability. So we're really the only tray out there that can have this high of a hydrostatic head, because we're the only ones that have the design to be able to make up for that air permeability loss that we see in our filter. So that's really kind of what we had to look at. What's the highest water repellency that we can achieve with not shutting down our tray from an airflow standpoint? What's kind of interesting, if you use our filters and other trays, they don't work, and that's based on the airflow capabilities of our tray versus other trays. We've done numerous testing with competitive trays, and the airflow is just not there on those designs to be able to utilize a filter like ours. The thing is, in our tray, you're going to have condensation, varying levels of condensation in our tray. It's going to be dependent on multiple factors. It's going to be dependent on the density of the load, the pressure, the steam quality, how quickly you open the door, pull it out, how quickly you open the tray. There's quite a few things there. But that's science. You pull hot instruments into a cold, 68-degree room, they're going to create condensation. We can't stop that. The great thing is, though, is anything that's created from a sterile environment, which is condensation inside our tray, is going to remain sterile as long as that barrier is not broken. And based upon the technology of our filter and our sealing capabilities of the tray, we don't allow any pathways for those bugs to get into our tray. Therefore, that small amount of condensation that we do get in our tray is okay. And again, we have loads of testing that high power's done on the condensate and long-term testing up to 30 days. We talked about that volume of condensation. It's going to vary. It's been proven to be sterile. We have all the validations and the verifications to support that. Kind of the third part of our tray is really the design performance that we put into the sealing capabilities of it. We utilize it's actually, we kind of pulled it from an Army-grade cam lock mechanism to pull the lid interface into the base. So we actually pull the lid about 2 to 3 millimeters into our channel down into the base when you lock this tray. So again, if you guys, I'm sure, have all done this, take an old container and put a dollar bill in it, shut the container, and then pull the dollar bill out. Ours, you can lift up the tray with the dollar bill because it won't come out of there. So that interface there is not only extremely high level, but it's going to be there for a long time too, over the time and brutality that you guys put these trays through. The other thing is the aluminum wall thickness. So we have a thicker aluminum wall. It's more robust than the competition. We also fold over another 2 pieces of aluminum at the lip of the base. Again, where in our testing and in our due diligence before we started the company, we knew that if you nick that lip coming into the base lid interface, again, it's going to be a pathway for bugs to get in there. We decided to really beef that area up so that if there is a nick there, it won't be as pronounced and hopefully doesn't cause any, sterility maintenance problems over time. The secondary thing to that is we give a lifetime warranty on our trays. We believe so much in the quality of our tray that we'll give you a lifetime warranty. And that goes back to when we kind of built the company. We heard from a lot of people about we hate putting money into a product that we have to buy, 2 years down the road just to keep it going. So we wanted to kind of react to that and put a lifetime warranty in place. Again, the other thing about the sterility maintenance part of this is the patented filter covers that we have. We've utilized and came up with, from a design standpoint, a Steribex technology. It's a siliconized filter plate, and what it does is it has ridges on it, so that our concern was, over time of using this, how can we maintain this sealing capabilities? And we have reams of data that show any offset, left or right, up or down, east or west, with this design to ensure that we're going to have the sealing capabilities that we need. Very easy to manipulate, and again, I think what we believe is all leads to the highest sterility maintenance device that's ever been produced on the market. A little bit, the next picture is a picture of the cam lock mechanism, and that's kind of the mechanism that we took from the Army. It actually comes from a waterproof ammo can, is where we got that for. So that kind of gives you guys a little bit of overview of the science behind our tray. It's really based on design, high airflow. It's based on a unique proprietary filter that is hydrophobic in its capabilities, and it's based on the sterility maintenance and the sealing capabilities of our tray at the lid base interface and the filter plate interface. So what does that mean to you guys? So there's really 3 areas of opportunity in your facilities. We're a specialized tray. I say this all the time too. We're a specialized tray. There's really kind of 3 areas in the SPDOR departments that our tray makes a lot of sense for. We're not trying to go out and convert whole SPD departments. I don't think that's where our tray lies, to be honest with you. I think there's some good technology out there that works for that. We're really trying just to speed up the efficiency that you guys need in the SPD department. Try to give you a higher rate of sterility in some of your high, quick turnover type sets. So the first kind of area of, that we can affect is really the solutions for all the headaches in your SPD and ORs. You guys know those. There's 100 of them. The rep brings stuff in late. There's torn wraps. There's the 100 things, the case moves, case gets canceled, all those times where you need to turn things over quickly without having long turnover times. Again, we're door closed to door open on our total cycle anywhere from 17 to 22 minutes. So door closed, 4 minutes, door open, it's about 20 minutes just as an average. So we dropped that, the terminal times down from, 2.5, 3 hours down to 20 minutes, and then you're ready to go to the operating room. The staff will now have the ability to react quickly to those changes, any of the head-on cases, all that kind of stuff that we just talked about. The other good thing, and what we didn't see, but what we're seeing more is, it's one protocol for sterilization for this quick turnover type of sterilization. It's one button, it's, one tray, it's that whole part of the protocol that we talk about. We have a lot of I travel around and meet with some of our accounts that are utilizing the product, and it's one tray has really become a verb. They say, here, take this and one tray it. So it's kind of interesting. We've kind of gotten our own vernacular out in the marketplace where it's kind of become that we need it terminal sterilized, but we need it in 20 minutes. Here, go one tray it. And as a caveat to that too, we're in just from a sales standpoint too. We've been vetted in multiple hospitals, but we're in over 80 hospitals currently. Probably by the end of the year, that number will climb to about 125. So we've been through some of the big vetting processes, and some of the guys on on the call today have done a lot of those things also. The workflow improvements, I kind of talked to the SPD department is, you guys have X number of employees, that's usually less than you had last year, to do the same amount of work, if not more, because most of those sets are now becoming more complex. Your 1 or 2 level pedicle screw sets, now 4. Anyway, the problem is with that equation, there's really only one factor that can affect that, and it's really efficiency. I mean, what you guys need to do is become more efficient, and really the only way to become more efficient is to change the way you all do everything. We have the technology to be able to do that. So if you look at kind of just some quick numbers, the staff time needed to complete loaner prep side, 100 trays with blue wrap on the prep time, we're looking at 500 minutes versus about 150, just because the prep time is very easy with our tray. You eliminate that reprocessing due to the wet and torn wraps. You can quickly process those loaners now in 20 minutes versus the 2 to 4 currently needed. And then back to the cost savings aspects of it is, we hope that you're going to be able to reduce the need for any of those redundant instrument sets. If a new doc comes on board and says, I need 4 ortho trays, well, maybe you only need 3. Let's save that money because of the efficiencies that one tray can bring to your SPD and operating room. Kind of the third way that we market the tray and how it's best utilized is really the replacement for immediate use sterilization or flash sterilization. We really retain the speed of a flash cycle. We're just a hair over depending on what your protocol is. But with one tray, you're never going to flash again. Again, we're a terminal tray. I mean, we have all the FO values to follow everything up. From a safety standpoint, your patients are going to receive that safest form of sterilization in every situation. We get to eliminate the paperwork associated with the immediate use runs required by Joint Commission. We can decrease, hopefully, infection rates. That's going to be a long-term study that we're going to do at some of our facilities. We know we can save the facility money by turning these things over from a terminal standpoint. And terminal sterilization is really the gold standard for you guys. Kind of one of the offshoots that we're seeing, too, is a better, more efficient utilization of the operating room sterilizers, which caveats into we've done a lot of new hospitals that have been able to minimize the amount of sterilizers that they need in the OR and in the SPD. We had one hospital that was actually able to get rid of one of the sterilizers that they were planning on putting into their facility. So, from a cost-saving standpoint, I think we're doing well. Another big, savings is the cost savings over blue wrap. Blue wrap's an antiquated technology. It's 40 years old. It hasn't changed at all. You can tell it's an antiquated technology by all the things that everybody buys to keep that antiquated technology working. Bumpers, towels, trays, all of the other stuff that we use to kind of add on to the blue wrap to lessen its downfalls. We wanted to look at that as a green initiative too. And it's a lot of wasted material. There's employee costs. There's energy wasted there by those long cycles. We looked at the water expenditures, and a lot of that stuff's going to be what we're finding out is overseas and outside the United States, that's a big number for those hospitals that are working in some of the poorer countries that we're dealing with. But the water expenditures are 75%, if not more, less than those standard runs. Again, we talked a little bit about reduce the purchase of redundant instrumentation. Again, if you have the ability to turn these things over when you need it, then hopefully you can reduce the purchase of that redundant instrumentation. We talked about that new surgeon needing specials. You know, maybe you don't buy 3, you can buy 2. You can always buy more if the need warrants it, but hopefully we can reduce that redundant instrument purchase. You know, the battery-operated drills, this is kind of one of my, I'm an ortho spine guy, so, you know, almost every SPD department they're going to buy another drill or 2 or 3 or 4 this year just because it's always in their budget. You probably have enough drills, you just need a better way to manage that inventory, and I think that's what one tray can provide. You know, we can provide the efficiencies to manage your current inventory better to hopefully hinder you from purchasing more inventory. Additional retractor sets are another one that we talk about quite a bit. They're very expensive, $75,000, $100,000. So, you know, if we can eliminate the need to buy one of those, that's great for us and the technology. Disposal cost has been a huge thing. You know, Blue Wrap's significant disposal cost up in the operating room. It's by far the highest, the most wasteful piece in the operating room. And we reduced that Blue Wrap by 95, if not more %, based on our 3 little filters versus those big double Blue Wraps. Our product line, just to make sure everybody's in line, we have 6 sizes. So there's a 24 length and a 21 length, and the sizes in those are 4, 6, and 8 heights. We made our trays to accommodate most OEM sets. There's a handful out there that we have worked with that don't fit in our trays, but I would say 99+% of the time they're going to fit in one of those 24-inch trays. I wanted to talk a little bit about that Sterobex technology that we've put into this tray. It's really state-of-the-art technology. We know what we have. We're a sealed tray. We wanted to ensure that sterility. So we've been working on this for quite a bit of time. That if you can see, I don't know if everybody has this up, but there's ridges involved in there. And really our concern is over time, how does a metal-on-metal interface react 3 years down the road? And what we were afraid of is, based on the use with you guys out in the field, would that interface weaken, therefore not give us a sealed tray in the field? That's why we're working on this Sterobex technology. It's really just increases the barrier protection in the filter, you know, in the filter plate, filter, and tray complex there. So hopefully we can show you guys that. And again, it's pretty amazing stuff. You put the filter in, lock our filter cover in, and you can fill the whole thing with water and let it sit there for the rest of your life if you want. It'll eventually evaporate. Again, we were asked and changed our filter design, just so everybody knows. So we have 2 holes in our filters that prevent any misalignment of our filter. We also placed 1 tray on there to make sure that, you know, everybody in the marketplace knows that this filter needs to be used with our tray, not vice versa. And it's packaging that really stands out. If everybody doesn't know, we sell a processing kit with 2 locks with indicator dots, 2 load cards, Class 5 integrator, and then the 3 filters that we have up there. We changed our lock too. Our tray's different. A lot of people utilize those locks. The locks that we had that are out on the marketplace are subpar for what we need. We heard a lot of feedback from the market, or not a lot, but a little bit of feedback from the marketplace. So we're actually making our own lock now. It's custom made for us. It's the perfect size and specification that we really need. So just another thing where I think we could go off the shelf with something and not worry about it, but we took the 10 steps farther to really get a custom-made lock for this tray. That's all I had. So I kept my part of it short. I think we're going to roll into the questions now. I think that's where we can kind of look at some of this stuff and get some feedback and get a good discussion going. We're going to turn this over to Dave and Mark. They're going to kind of lead the question part of this. If there's any direct questions to me, I'm happy to pipe up and answer those. So we'll turn that over to Dave and Mark.
Thanks, Scott. Mark, are you unmuted?
I am now unmuted. Can you hear me?
Very good. Hey, Scott, just a little point on that dollar test you mentioned. We're kind of broke down here in the basement. I didn't really have a dollar. Like, can we use Monopoly money if we had to? Because, it's a little tight down here in the basement. That's just a little joke. But Mark, we're going to go through the questions that we compiled. And I just had a couple of points. I didn't want to lose them while Scott was talking. I think that's, in his slides, it showed that I think that people get inundated. Their minds get, a new product comes into the department, and I think for the AMI users out there, this isn't news to us, but there is the new Section 12 in AMI about new product evaluation, and it covers a lot of the good bullet points, and I think, and I know because I brought it into my hospital, that this product, Scott just covered all the points on 12.2 in ST79 about the considerations. But what happens is in our minds mentally, we put things into categories. Like he said, like, okay, there's immediate use, there's our loaners, and then there's day-to-day. Oh, my God, a turnover. Oh, they added a case. We got to flip this set over. And, we try to come up with different, right now, currently, we have different guidance for those, like immediate use. So the big leap with immediate use is that, is it immediate use if you're using an FDA approved container according to its IFU, and then you're using a device, and that's, again, no one's saying to get away from critical thinking or making decisions in your hospital. You may have policies in place right now about moisture in a set. You send up the one tray to the OR and there's moisture, they may say it's contaminated. But what I'd ask people to think about is, if you sent up a quote-unquote a daily tray, a regular tray, sent it upstairs, and it had moisture in it, the OR would say that's contaminated, immediate use it. And then you'd send it downstairs, and with the current or the past container devices that I used to use, I would have sent that device back up or used the sterilizers in the OR to immediate use it. And I would have given that device back to the OR with probably about 10 times the amount of water that they discovered in it. And I'm just referring to rigid container devices. We know the issues with wraps because it could penetrate. But I just wanted to point that out because it gets, no one's asking anyone to, be a bull in a china shop. Just like when any of us are out there speaking, we always say you can't bring in a device and shut down surgery, or you got to work within the Section 12 for new product evaluation. And that essentially, in a nutshell, is you never do anything in a vacuum. You get your whole team involved. So with that being said, Mark, we'll roll in. I'll hand it over to you, buddy.
Yeah, Dave, you said, it's a tough nut to crack. It's a walnut. I had when we first, just to let where I'm at with the product, just like any other product that's new, I wanted to bring it in, do some, product evaluation, some testing. And the other day we had just finished up 2 trays that we had done culture plates on that were over to the lab. I'm actually finalizing a report that I did there. But to go back to where this call started from, based off of Dave's list, that Steve Adams actually helped us out with this too. We were circulating questions about the one tray because initially it started off with that chain of emails, and a lot of the questions were very similar. And based off the presentation that was just given, I'm going to read the questions off. And the first one was, can you explain the current FDA-approved use of the one tray? So that was brought up earlier in the presentation. I'm going to read through the 6 questions, and I want to make sure, and Dave, you can elaborate on this with me.
Sure.
Were these questions answered? Because that was the whole point of this call. We wanted to get the questions in first so that we weren't, continuing on this long email chain, and that everyone that is on the call as a user is getting the answers that they're looking for, and then we can open it up for questions because we got about another 15 minutes or so. Or if you got my invite, I have it ending at 1:11, not 1 o'clock. So the first question was, can you explain the FDA-approved use of the one tray? The second question was, can you explain the rationale behind the design of the one tray? The third question is, what is vent-to-volume ratio, and why is that an important concept for CS personnel? The fourth question was, explain how the retained moisture in the set after sterilization can be an acceptable concept. Please provide an update on your endeavor to work with manufacturers of instruments and loaned vendor trays in regards to validation studies for sterilization exposure times when using the one tray product. And then the final question was, can you explain the use of the one tray as an IUSS container versus a terminal container with a shelf life? What is the status of the approved shelf life? So those were the questions that were asked. A lot of the questions were very similar that came into either me or Dave or Steve Adams. We did put them together, and it ended up being basically these 6 questions. And during this presentation, I know a lot of these items were hit. And I'm wondering if now, and Dave, let me know what you think, would this be the time to open it up for questions?
Yeah, it would seem appropriate. Like I said, on the road, and I'm sure you guys are out there too, it's the season. Just verbally, like I said, a lot of conversations come up where, a lot of times fellow users want us to solve the riddle of what goes on in their specific facility. And, we can't do that unless we go into their facility. You just got to use the guidance that's out there. You follow IFUs, and sometimes that's a treacherous road, is a little hard to navigate because you have a 0 dry time container, but my manufacturer says 10 minutes minimum dry. Sometimes they say no minimum dry. And what I referred to, if you guys remember on that original email, I mentioned like a paradigm shift, is that the paradigm needs to shift as when more of these vendors, these OEM vendors, start working with this technology, they will start doing their 510K. Hopefully they'll do their validations in a container, because if they're doing their validations in a blue wrap, you're going to have a 30-minute dry time. You're going to have, but if you do it, and I would dare say in any rigid container, you're going to have a better dry time. And with this technology, at least with the testing I did at my facility, kicking the tires and implementing it, the devices come out pretty dry, even with the 0 or with the IFU of the device I'm putting it in, recommend for dry. So is there a way that, Dave, you can unmute everyone, or how do you want to handle the calls? What's the best format?
Let me do this, Dave and Mark. Let me unmute the line so we can take some calls, and you guys can quarterback that. So hold on one second.
Is everybody on?
Line's open now.
All right,
Okay,
good. Can I start off? This is Rose.
Rose, yep.
Yes, thank you. The one thing I have several concerns, but the one concern, we're talking a lot about the no dry time, but one of the issues, we've got complicated devices, and how can a container manufacturer tell us what exposure time we should have? So this tray has been cleared for a 4-minute standard 3-POS exposure time, but we know that sometimes that is not enough for some very complicated devices. So that's one of my issues. So
extended cycles.
We're not just talking about the dry time here, but the exposure time is an issue.
Scott, are you out there? You want to address that one?
Rose, we are cleared for, like you just said. What I can tell you is we haven't found any set that we haven't been able to process in our FDA cleared cycle, which is the 4 minutes.
Well, wait a minute. When you say you haven't been able to, this is my question. Have you validated that, and maybe somebody could throw out a complicated piece of equipment right now that takes longer. I can't think of anything right now. But have you validated that particular one? Because that manufacturer has validated that it needs to be, 20 minutes because of its design. So how do you know that you're actually getting it sterile?
Well, you know what? Let me just ask this too, Scott, to add that just pretend the one tray didn't exist on the market, and we had to do that in a Genesis or any other competitor container. Right. I think and correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, is it 4 minutes minimum where you're not just saying it has to be 4 minutes, because I would then, switch over to the manufacturer's IFU and go with the 18 minutes exposure, assuming that your device is, in the literature says a minimum.
I just want to check one quick or actually this is just a question on the in the instructions for use. Now it says complex instruments should be prepared and sterilized according to the manufacturer's written instructions, and I think that goes to what Rose is saying. If the containment device says 4 minute zero dry, does that mean if I need to go to an extended cycle, can I go to an extended cycle? And I think that would be the question, right, Rose?
Yes, exactly.
Good one.
We have done testing with longer cycles. So, from that standpoint, the tray and the filter media can stand up to an extended cycle. I think it comes back to the whole OEM, and I assume you're talking about OEM trays because everything else you have to validate in your hospital anyway.
No, you can't validate in your hospital. You can only verify. So, and that's OEM or any other instrument. You can only verify. You can't validate. We can't validate.
I'll be the devil's advocate here too. If you look at the IFUs for Blue Wrap, it states 4 minutes. It doesn't state any extended dry times. So has one of the 19 Blue Wraps that's out there been approved for extended dry times with that set? The question is I feel like a loaded question because it's impossible for us to go to the 200 spine companies and the 180 ortho companies and validate every tray that's ever been on the marketplace and keep up with every change in design that they do on a daily, weekly.
Well, that wasn't the question. The question is basically your IFU, and I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me. Is it only a 4 minute? And I think Dave or Mark, you put it better. Is it only for a 4 minute exposure time, or is that minimal?
That's minimal. So that's
and it
the minimal.
states that in the IFU? Just
like with Blue Wrap. You guys use extended cycles with Blue Wrap currently, correct?
We do.
If you look at the IFU for Blue Wrap, it states the same thing as us. We're 4 minutes, but you guys, technically it's off-label. If you're looking at it that way, because you have to extend those cycles to deal with the complex instrumentation that you're dealing with. And
Mark, you said the IFU said it had that statement, like it's basically deferring you to the OEM's IFU.
It's page 10, loading the container. At the bottom, it's a caution. Complex instruments should be prepared and sterilized according to the manufacturer's written instructions.
Okay, so that's always that balance of IFUs.
Yeah, but what does
it goes back to that I can't verify or validate all the trays that are out there. I think that's where the hospital and you guys as the thought leaders in sterilization need to look at it and say, okay, I'm going to do some testing with this tray and see if I got a complex set that takes a 6 minute exposure. Can I do that in 4 minutes with one tray? And I don't know how we get around that, Rose. I guess, if there's a better solution, I'd love to hear it.
There is none.
Yeah.
Rose, to that point, that's sort of what I did when I brought the container, the device in here. I overkilled it, and I'm not saying people need to do this, but I did my in-house verification with the existing sterilization products I have on the shelf, the 3Ms, the indicators, whatever I had. And then I used Chuck Hughes. I used his company. I did his little independent tests. I ran them in side by side with my devices, and then I mailed his out so that I had two, I did the whole Amy thing, opened them up, made sure there wasn't wetness. If there was, I took pictures of everything, have them in books here, so that if the company or the Joint Commission or the state came in and said, you took this device that was previously wrapped and put it in this, I didn't just take it and throw it in a container. I did all this verification testing on it, because if you look at my immediate use rate and the turnover rate, because of holes in the blue paper, we felt it was a safer, more effective way to go in the rigid container, for that device.
And Dave, one concern, and this is something that I always, this is where I have a hard time still wrapping my head around it, was, when I did my first testing, yes, there was moisture in the pan. And, what I thought would be a good test to run here would be to, put it on the shelf for the 30 days, and then we did 10 touch plates over the two pans and, grew them out, which I thought would be something interesting. But, because, you can do your own product testing, dropping biologicals. You can use the SPS the SPS strip tests and stuff like that. I just thought, maybe even hitting it with some culture plates.
Yeah, so you cultured, yeah. And
Mark,
Chuck came...
Mark, what did you
Rose.
culture? Did you just culture the instruments themselves, or how did you culture it?
So we did 2 equal sets, both with each set and the container at max weight. Did it on a 4-minute zero dry time. We shelved them for the 30 days. Actually, it was on day 29. We opened them up. We took 5 culture plates. We cultured the base of the pan where I noticed moisture when I sterilized it the first time. Hit the center of the pan, the corner of the pans. Then we did quadrants, and then we hit different portions of instruments that were in there. So, for example, one of them was like a reamer. We hit the top of the reamer. We took not that, I'm not a testing lab, so I'm just doing this as a user, just using my own rationale. But actually it had a little bit of a cannula. We jammed that into the touch plate, and we did that over a series throughout the pan. And then after that, we documented it, sent it up to the lab. That's what we did. Now, is that the right technique or method to do it? I just know I had no growth coming back, and that's for me to move on or continue right now. I'm like, the first thing I wanted to do was to test the product before I even decide to put it out into the field. And I still have a couple more tests that I want to run, more so with closer shelf life. But I think, if there was moisture in there that, could potentially have any growth after that 29 days, and I didn't see anything, it's a step in a good direction for me. That's all I've done on my end.
Okay. I have one other question, and I promise I'll keep quiet. I have asked for, and I have never seen the actual statement from the FDA that has stated that this is a terminal sterilization device with no dry time. I know I've seen it on the lid, but I have asked for that statement right from the FDA, and I haven't seen it. If somebody has that and could send that to every one of us,
do you have that available?
Specifically says that this is a terminal sterilization.
We don't have that, and there's a
but
reason.
But it's written on your container tray.
Mm-hmm. Right, because it's a classification. There's a classification with details behind what is a terminal tray, what is an immediate use tray. So I guess, Rose, here I'll ask you.
And my question is only this, because if I'm an expert witness in a case and the patient has an infection for something, that's what I'm going to ask for.
Yeah. Well, what I can show you is everything that we have from the FDA approval that talks about what we are and how we got there. And I'll share all that with you.
Right, and I just want the highlighted piece that says it is for terminal sterilization, because we know we've sat in the meetings with the FDA that says they have never released a container with no dry time that has a shelf life. So I guess that's my point.
Yeah, it's always, Rose, when we sit with FDA, we always end up spinning our heads, huh? What?
So, Dave and Mark, are you using the device for immediate use, or are you using it for terminal sterilization?
Okay, so right now I'm still testing. My intent of use is going to be for quick turnaround. So, for example, to the point that was mentioned earlier, I have 1 or 2 widgets here that I just cannot find anywhere else. And if something happens and that hits the floor and I need to turn it around, because this has a storage life, I guess you would say it's not IUSS, so therefore I wouldn't document it as IUSS. I might create something differently and maybe call it rapid sterilization, because that's what I hear, being called. But my plan would not be to use it for the 30-day shelf life. I don't want to do that. We already have an investment in another container right now, and I don't like having multiple products on my shelf. However, I do have one type of flash technology here, and I would like to look at this to replace it.
Yeah, and I guess the confusion for me is when I go back and I look at the 510K clearance on it, the predicate devices are IUSS containers from Case Medical and from Symmetry, which is the Riley Flash Pack.
Yeah.
So I get concerned in the world that we live in these days with the FDA sending out notices that say a device has been adulterated, and there's either a cease or desist, or you got to figure out some other way how to take care of that. I want to make certain that the documentation that I have supports the use of that device.
Let me speak to the predicate device real quick. We knew we were different, and that's the hard part, is when you have two factions, terminal and immediate use, and you're both of them but neither of them, where do you put yourself in a classification that only has two classes? That's the real challenge that we've had since day one, and we've talked with most of you face-to-face about this. The decision was, when we picked our predicate device, do you pick one that has the terminal side of this or no dry time, and how best to support those claims against that predicate device? The decision was made. The bigger discussion with the FDA is going to be the zero dry time, so let's pick immediate use containers as our predicate device to walk down that road, because they don't have dry times either. And that's the rationale behind what was picked and why for the predicate device. I get this every day, and I hear you guys, what are you? We're really right in between of both of them. I've had this conversation with Cynthia a couple times. I think we are a different tray. I mean, we kind of sit on both sides of the fence. Unfortunately, the way the standards are written today, we kind of have to be one or the other. You can't be middle of the fence, because then I'd get the questions, well, you're a rapid terminal, rapid sterilization container. Where is that spelled out in the standards? And I think that's our challenge too. We have a great technology. I think we need to work with everybody that's on the line to get the understanding built into the standards. And I think that's what.
And Scott, that's what we put Section 12 in, we said it's like turning an aircraft carrier around, and we went from 10-year revisions to 2 years. But when the Class 6 hit the market, we said, look, we need to put something, and credit, Damian Berg was pretty instrumental in that, but Section 12 got put in there so that, life happens fast, and then Amy tries to catch up, the standards try to catch up. So they tried to give some guidance in there on how to not just bring an item into your department in a bubble, if you will, just like, hey, the manager decided to bring it in,
If you want to talk about how you're using the one tray in your facility?
Yes, Mark mentioned what he was doing. I had brought in, I was using the Riley Flash Pack, so I no longer have those devices. I do use the one tray. We are still working out internally, like according to the Section 12 with infection control, and we didn't want to lose the data because immediate use was tracked according to standard. We track it, we report it out to infection control, we were trending it. We didn't want to lose that data, so we're essentially still going to track the numbers, because we want to know. Does somebody have sloppy hands in the OR? Did someone drop an instrument 52 times? We might have to work with that technician. So we're still coming up with a protocol on how to still track it essentially, but it's not reportable as immediate use. If we're following, if we have all the IFUs in place for the device and then for the container. And then what we did is we have about 90 trays that we use. We did that verification testing here, like I said, with the specific trays. We have the known loaners that come up. They're repeat offenders. They come through on a regular basis. We did the verification testing on those, and we have the set configurations in the computer so that when those loaner trays show up, you go into the computer, you look for the count sheet, and then you also see the set configuration. Tray 1 and 2 there's A and B to this set. A goes on the top, B goes on the bottom, because that's how we did our verification testing, and we containerized them and used the one tray. And I guess the beauty of the 30 days, or even if it was still originally it was 14 or 48 hours, was that if like Mark, if you have a busy ortho day today and tomorrow, a lot of times we'll label the loaners, as you guys know, open only if necessary, or hold. And if they're not used on the case today and they're still in that closed container device, we will transfer those over and save all that reprocessing time for the case tomorrow. And, we had 48 to do that, but now that we've had the 30, I don't know what company can keep a loaner here for 30 days, but if they could and we needed it, we may not have the space to keep it that long. But if it's within a 5-day business day schedule, we'll keep the loaners here and try to turn them back over for other procedures.
So, Dave, was your risk manager okay with that?
On the use side, on the immediate use side?
On using them for longer or sitting on the shelf?
Yes. I showed her all the data and the testing and the things that we had done. I told her when Mark gets his data, hopefully he was going to be able to share the, the plate or the cultures that he did as well. But, they're very confident, Rose, as you might imagine. They know I'm always doing crazy testing down here. And I was trying to say earlier, Chuck Hughes came down to visit me, and he told me I was a nut job. He's like, you're crazy with the testing you do. He's like, have you ever heard of product families? And I said, product families are great, but you know where we are, Rose, in the market, you and I, and we're on the committees, and people ask us questions. I always want to be a little bit above and go a little bit over, because we're held usually to a bigger standard.
We have 9 minutes left, and I didn't know if there were more questions.
Yeah, so Dave, can you confirm then that you're using the one tray for your loaners?
Yes. Only for the loaners that we did the verification testing on. We have the regular cast of characters that come through here, the J&Js, the Smith & Nephews. And I'm trying to get my hands on a document. My local Smith & Nephew rep told me that, and he's getting the document to me. I'll share it with the group when he get it in my hands, that they've been cleared. They did some testing, and Smith & Nephew can be containerized. And I said, well, obviously, give me the paperwork on that, So if I can get my hands on that, I don't know if they use a specific device or a specific brand.
It's an ASCII, right?
I know a lot of these vendors. I have some loaner trays that show up now that are in what I believe they must have teamed up maybe with Aesculap, because they look like Aesculap containers, and they're dropping them off with filters, and but we have to inspect the as you guys know, the gaskets and make sure they're functional, because we don't have those. If we're not using Aesculap, we don't have those kind of locks on hand, and filters as well.
We got 8 minutes. If anyone else has a question that they want to throw out there.
This is Scott Cohen. I'm with IST. I just wanted to let everybody know, too, we're happy to come to your facility and give you trays to verify in your own facilities. So, if anybody on the call wants, a handful of these trays and filters and to do their own verification, we support that every day. So just let us know, and we can hook you up with the local rep, and we can get that taken care of easily, just like we did with Mark and Dave.
Thanks, Scott.
So Scott, is it the company's intent to eventually have this tray take the place, for example, of an Aesculap container, or be in competition with Aesculap for terminal sterilization?
Absolutely not. I think our biggest competition is Blue Wrap, and that it always has been. I think Aesculap containers and the other container manufacturers do what they do well. There's no reason to get away from that. Our tray was really designed and created to take care of the things that we're talking about, which is, the high turnover sets, the quick needs that are in the operating room in the SPD department. I don't think we'll ever get to a point where you don't want to have one tray everywhere in the hospital. I just don't think it makes sense.
Patty, if you take Scott up on that offer and kick the tires on it, what we saw in our verification testing was, of course, when my IFU for the set said, we know it's 0 on the container. So I take the instrument tray. I had like a 27-pounder that was grandfathered in, big ortho tray, ran it at the IFUs. I think the minimum said 20 minutes minimum dry. It was bone dry. But then, of course, being me, I lowered the dry time and got it. And it was probably around the 4 to 5 minute mark. And if Scott, if you put the image back up, or Dave, of the container itself, you can see that plate. I never had moisture, even at 0 when there was moisture. I very rarely had moisture on the instrumentation itself. It was usually underneath the plate. The plate lies on the bottom. That plate on the left side, I don't know if you can see the slides, but it essentially sits in the bottom, and the moisture was mostly underneath that plate in those designated little troughs that they do.
Yeah, so unfortunately, Dave, I'm on the phone call only. I'll follow up and pull the PowerPoint off when I can.
We'll get it up there for you.
But I guess my concern here is the human factors piece. So we have terminal containers, for example, we'll call Genesis, Aesculap, whomever, and now we have a device that has a 30-day shelf life. And I understand you're working on your year, and it's not any different than what our terminal sterilization folks have. They've all done shelf life studies. But I'm still going back, and I'm stuck on the IUSS piece. And I always found it interesting that they had a 48-hour shelf life when, in fact, immediate use means immediate use. So I don't understand why we're moving away from that verbiage, I guess.
I guess that's like we said, turning the aircraft carrier around. It was a big leap when the position papers came out and we redefined flashing as immediate use, and now it seems like we're going to have to take the next step and further define immediate use. I mean, it's really, if you're following the IFU of this container and you're following the IFU of your device that's inside of it, and the container says, hey, the IFU to the device will trump us if it's an 18-minute cycle or whatever, are you doing immediate use? Like Mark said, with those rapid turnovers, my base cycle here is 4 exposure and 45 dry. So theoretically, if I have a turnover, if they add a 4th case on today, I can turn it quicker, because if the IFU has a minimum of 20, and I already did some of that, and I know it really doesn't matter if I had the moisture under the plate, because we worked that out in our hospital here. We said, look, on this device, if there's moisture, it's not contaminated, but it's still coming out dry, like I said, in our verification testing that we did. Now I can get that set at least out of the autoclave and cooling, 25 minutes sooner, and have the BI planted than just doing my old 4 and 45,
I get that. I think I just go back to the human element of going, so, perhaps I have a wet Aesculap tray, but I'm used to the new container system that can sit for 30 days and may have some moisture in it, and I might,
like confusing the two, like, moisture's okay.
It's the competency and the training of the staff and making certain that they understand.
Yeah, I would not disagree with you on that. You definitely got to have good training, and this is a different device than this device. It's blue, thank God it's blue on the bottom, and most of the other ones are all silver. It says 1 tray on it. Just, I think, no differently than when they used to see the Riley Flash Pack come up. You knew it was a distinctly different product. You had to twist the little valve. You had to press the button, and if you didn't know how to do that, or the difference between that, then there could have been problems there too. At least with the Riley. I didn't use any other Flash Pack.
Okay, this is Rose. I lied. I have one more question. I thought somebody else would ask this. But you guys know me. I can't be quiet. Okay, so I have instruments sitting in there for 30 days, or in the future, a year. What's the issue with the possibility, and there's moisture in there, what's the issue, the possibility of some of those instruments? We know they're not always the best grade instruments, of them rusting.
Could be an issue,
I can speak to that. Is what we found, we've done retained moisture testing, and every test that we've ever done, no matter what the load composition is, there's 0 moisture when we open those trays in the 8 to 9 day period, depending on what the complexity of the tray is. So you're going to have a week and a day or two that there's actually going to be moisture in that tray. The rest of it's going to evaporate, just like it does with any other tray or blue wrap. So it's not going to be in there for 30 days. I mean, I think that's the first thing that you got to think about. And the secondary part is it's something that we haven't seen in the marketplace to date, and we do have, some of these out there that are being used for 30 days.
I think it's kind of noble that you guys are going for the 1 year, but if you're going to stay within this market, like I said, when would we ever really keep something for a year if it's a loaner or it was immediate use? And Rose, like we always say, if it's sitting on the shelf for a year, what the heck's it on the shelf for, right? Unless it was trauma or some like one-of-a-kind device. Scott, 48 hours, anything could be bad, any amount of moisture. But what I found, like I said, at least in mine, I was overloading the tray. The moisture at 0 or a few minutes above, when there was moisture left over, was underneath that plate because the instruments were heating up enough and I'm opening it as soon as it's out of the autoclave. I was doing it with hot gloves on. My next phase of verification, I want to let it sit and cool. That same set that had moisture at 0. As soon as I open the door, I want to let it sit and cool for 2 hours and then see if there's still moisture. I hadn't gotten that far yet.
This is Donna McLaughlin. I have a question. Am I going to have to fight for all this testing? Am I going to do my own testing for this tray to prove, to the Joint Commission or CMS that walks through my door that I've done all of this because I don't have that paper from the FDA that says this is a terminal sterilized case? Or is this how it's always going to be? I mean, I have to fight so much for everything else,
I hear you. Well, I mean, like I said, Donna, I admit I always do things over the top. I've never really. I almost wish the last time they came to, I showed off some of the testing because I feel like I did all this work and nobody ever asked me. But it's not that they won't ask you. But I think the bigger issue would be, like Rose said, like God forbid there's a lawsuit, or that's the biggest area where I'm always like CYA. We're covering your butt.
Right.
That kind of keeps me up at night, and that's why I do the extra testing. But I think the short answer, I mean, in my opinion, I just, as long as you're meeting the minimum that's in ST79, I mean, at a minimum, like you bring in a new device, we have the whole section on containers, and then I kind of use 12 just because it's new, and I'm doing new and different things with it, so I use that new product eval. And I would just say to them, and if you did the product families, that would be adequate. I mean, I just chose to go a little bit over the top and do every single tray,
Yes, I agree.
Okay, well, with that, it's 1:13. I don't know if IST folks want to still stay on the line for more questions if there are any, but if not, we can either, if there are questions, I got everyone on this email list, which I can redistribute to everyone if you want to keep chatting about the topic. The intent of the call was so that we were able to try to get everything out there and try to get the questions answered. And if that is the case, great. If the questions are there, it does sound like there's a couple lingering, especially regarding, the FDA. I think also if it's possible, for this presentation, if it's okay to be posted on the website, because I know there were a lot of people that couldn't make the meeting that would like to at least see the audio or hear the audio portion of it. So, with that, if there are no further questions, and if like I said, if you want to keep this group still going, just shoot me an email and we can kind of recirculate and kick it around again and, try to, get more answers as we move together. And I think, as a group of users like we are, to be able to pull this off and get, together with the manufacturer to get clarification and, if need be, work with them because I think the overall end product is something that we're looking for, something that we can turn around fast, safe, effectively. But, to everyone else's points, we want to make sure that we have our ducks in a row, So, Dave, anything else? Alrighty. Anyone?
It's Scott. I just want to say thanks for being on the call, everybody. I appreciate it. A lot of these questions we have to vet out. We're in the same as you guys. The standards don't call us out, and hopefully we can all. What we do know is the technology works, and it works really well. We're working hard to get with all those OEMs to validate with most of them. It's an uphill battle, though, so we're working hard on that end. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, guys, for getting it together.
See you next